Most gardeners just sleep through June, and honestly it is costing them their entire summer harvest. June is not some kind of gap month where you sit back, miss it, and you will spend the rest of summer staring at a half-empty garden, wondering what went wrong. The first crop on this list is one that pretty much everyone grows at some point, but almost nobody thinks to actually replant in June. Okay, so herbs. I know, sounds basic, right? But hear me out, because herbs are quietly one of the highest value things you can grow in any garden. And that is genuinely not a stretch. Think about what happens when you are cooking a meal built around those big summer vegetables. Your cucumbers, your tomatoes, your squash, your peppers. Every single one of those gets dramatically better the moment you reach for fresh sage, oregano, rosemary or basil from just outside your back door. And if you were to go to the store and grab those same herbs, you know how much you are actually spending on. That tiny, sad little plastic clamshell that is already going yellow at the edges. It is kind of insane, honestly. Growing your own is one of the smartest moves you can make, and June is the perfect time to resow a fresh round. Here is how to approach each herb without pulling your hair out along the way. Basil is your easiest starting point, no question. It germinates in roughly 5 to 10 days, and it has this gel-forming seed coating. The technical word is mucilaginous, but gel-forming tells you everything you need to know. Which means when basil seeds get wet, they basically lock moisture in around themselves and create a little protected environment to sprout from. Pretty cool, right? If you want a variety that is not going to bolt on you the moment summer heat kicks in, go with Emerald Towers. It stays vegetative longer and pushes out dense, packed leaves that are just great in the kitchen. Thyme and oregano are a completely different situation. You know, those seeds are tiny, like genuinely almost invisible tiny. So you surface sow them right onto the top of the soil and barely cover them at all. The thing that kills those seeds more than anything else is drying out, even just once. Those seeds are so small, they have almost no moisture reserve. So if the top of your soil dries out before germination is done, that is it, you are starting over. Keep them consistently moist and they will come up without any fuss. Sage gives you a bigger seed and a lot more room for error. It will germinate in 1 to 2 weeks and it pretty much just wants to grow without much help. And then there is rosemary, which is, kind of the wild card of the whole group. You can start it from seed, sure, but germination can take up to a full month. A full month. And honestly, who has time for that? The smarter move is taking a cutting from an existing rosemary plant, yours or a friend's, stripping the lower leaves off, and pushing it into a small cell tray filled with damp soil. Within a week or two, roots will be forming right at the base of that cutting, and you have completely skipped the most frustrating part of the whole process. Grab a tray, scatter your seeds by type, keep everything moist, and you will have a working herb garden coming up well before June is over. Now, if herbs are the support act in the garden, the next crop is the absolute headliner. And June gives you a way to grow it that most people have genuinely never even considered. All right, tomatoes. Everyone grows tomatoes. You probably already have some going in your garden right now. And that is kind of the whole point here. Most people have no idea that June is actually a great time to start a second wave of them, specifically of determinate varieties, determinate tomatoes, the bushing types. And they grow to a set size, set all their fruit at roughly the same time, and ripen over about a 2-week window. That concentrated harvest is genuinely useful because it means you can fill a freezer, pack jars of sauce, and have tomatoes carrying you all the way through winter into next spring when you start the whole cycle over again. Varieties like Italian Roma or Container's Choice Bush are solid options that work well for both sauce and fresh eating. So you get a lot of flexibility with what you do with the harvest. But here is the part that honestly blows people's minds the first time they hear it. And this is the best part. You do not need to buy a single new seed or plant to do any of this. If you already have tomatoes growing right now, you are sitting on a completely free propagation machine without even realizing it. Every single tomato plant produces what are called suckers, that extra little shoot that pops up in the angle between the main stem and a leaf node. These grow fast, they grow constantly, and most gardeners just pinch them off and toss them in the compost without a second thought. Do not do that. Snap one off cleanly, strip the lower leaves, pinch off any flower clusters, because you want this cutting completely focused on rooting, not on flowering or anything else. And push the stem down into a cell tray filled with moist soil. Press the soil firmly all around it for good contact. Within about a week, you will see actual roots forming right out of that buried stem. The reason you root it in soil rather than a glass of water, by the way, is that roots adapt to whatever medium they are forming in. A water-rooted cutting has to make another adjustment when it goes into garden soil. A soil-rooted cutting? The transition to your bed is completely seamless. One plant becomes two, two becomes four, and it costs absolutely nothing to do it. If you have tomatoes growing right now, and you probably do, go out there today, take a few suckers and get them rooting. You will have a full second harvest of determinate tomatoes heading into fall without having spent a single cent on seeds or new plants. Okay, the next crop has a bit of a reputation for being tricky. Some people honestly find it intimidating. But once you understand one specific thing about how it actually reproduces, it is way more forgiving than its reputation suggests. There is an old saying, knee-high by the 4th of July. Most gardeners know that one, right? And if your corn is not at least that tall by midsummer, your harvest is in serious trouble. Which means if you have not planted yet, right now is genuinely your last reasonable window, especially in colder climates where the season closes faster than you want it to. On variety choice, go with sweet corn for fresh eating. Full stop. There are flint corns, popcorns, all kinds of speciality types, and they are each great for what they are built for. But if you want to pull an ear off the stalk and eat it that evening, sweet corn wins every time. If you are in a colder growing zone, look specifically for buttergold because it hits maturity in 63 days. That is a real advantage over something like true gold, which can take anywhere from 70 to 80 days. In a short season, those extra couple of weeks can be the actual difference between a full harvest and watching your corn get knocked out by an early frost before it ever ripens. Now, here is the single most important thing to get right, and this is where most people mess up without even knowing it. Corn is wind pollinated. The tassels at the very top of each plant are the male part, and the silks hanging off the developing cob are the female part. Pollen has to drop from those tassels down onto the silks, and it does that through air movement. If you plant corn in a single straight row, there just is not enough mass for the wind to do its job reliably. You end up with patchy, half-pollinated cobs that are honestly pretty disappointing after all that effort. The fix is planting in a block. A 4x4 arrangement is a great starting point. Space your plants roughly 9 to 12 inches apart in a zigzag offset pattern, so each row is staggered from the one beside it. What you end up with is a dense block of corn where every single plant is surrounded by neighbours on all sides. Pollen moves freely through the whole thing, and pollination happens the way it is supposed to. You know, once that gets explained to you, it is hard to believe you ever planted corn in a straight row. It is a simple fix that makes a massive difference in what you actually pull out of the garden. Get your seeds in the ground in a proper block today, and you are genuinely on track for a real summer corn harvest. The next crop loves everything that June gives it, but plant it the wrong way and it will just sit there looking sad and doing absolutely nothing for weeks. And the real secret here, the actual secret, has nothing to do with what is going on above the ground. Cucumbers are one of those crops that genuinely thrives when you plant them directly in June, and here is why. What cucumbers actually care about most is not the air temperature, it is the soil temperature. A warm soil sends the signal to the seed that it is safe to germinate and push roots down, and June delivers that warmth consistently pretty much everywhere. They are also notoriously bad at recovering from transplant shock, like genuinely terrible at it. Which is another reason direct seeding in June makes way more sense than starting them indoors and transplanting later. You skip that whole painful step, the plant never has to deal with that setback, and it just gets on with growing. For varieties, the Muncher is a really solid all-purpose cucumber. Low bitterness, edible skin, and it is great raw in salads without needing to peel it first. If you want something a bit more fun, the Hocus gherkin produces those tiny, super crunchy pickles. Cornichons, you know the ones. And once you start harvesting them, it is honestly hard to stop. They are kind of addictive. If you are somewhere seriously hot, deep Texas, the desert Southwest, anywhere that regularly pushes past 100 degrees, look into the Armenian cucumber. I know, technically it is a melon, but it grows and tastes just like a cucumber. And it handles the kind of brutal summer heat that would wipe out a standard variety without even flinching. That alone makes it worth knowing about if you are in one of those climates. When you plant, always put in 2 seeds per spot rather than 1. 1 seed can fail to germinate or get taken out by a pest, and that whole position in your bed is just gone. You are waiting around for nothing. 2 seeds gives you the backup you need. Once they come up, thin to the strongest one and you are set. And if your garden is getting tight on space, honestly, whose garden is not in June? An A-frame trellis draped over a raised bed lets cucumbers climb up instead of sprawling out sideways. The footprint stays small. Harvesting is as easy as walking down the middle and picking from both sides, and your other plants keep their space. Cucumbers are one of those June wins that just keep giving once they hit their stride in warm soil. 2 seeds per spot, trellis if you can swing it, thin once they are up. That is really all there is to it. 2 seeds per spot, trellis if you can swing it, thin once they are up. That is really all there is to it. Now the next one is a flower. And look, before you think about scrolling past, just give this 30 seconds. Because what these plants actually do in your garden is way more than most people give them credit for. Okay, so here is the deal with flowers in a vegetable garden. A lot of people treat them like decoration, like a nice to have once all the real plants are sorted. And that is kind of backwards, honestly. Flowers like Zinnias and Cosmos are working plants. They pull in pollinators. They attract beneficial insects, the kind that go after the aphids and caterpillars that are quietly working through your vegetables while you're not watching. They make the whole ecosystem of the garden function better, and you can actually see that difference in your harvests when flowers are in there doing their thing versus when they are not. June is genuinely the ideal time to start both of them, and here is why. They actually prefer warm soil. A lot of people make the mistake of starting them too early when the ground is still cool and damp, and what they get is sluggish germination and spindly, weak little plants that never really take off. Wait until June and these things just explode. Fast germination, strong growth, and they hit their stride right when pollinators are most active in your garden, which is exactly when you want them there. Cosmos can run from 3 to 6 feet tall, depending on the variety, so they work great as a tall backdrop along a fence or the back of a bed where they are not shading out anything smaller. Zinnias give you way more flexibility on size. The Queenie Lime Orange is honestly one of the most interesting flowers you can grow. It gets close to 3 feet and it is an absolute showstopper if you have the space for it. But if you are working with a tight little gap between vegetable beds, you know that awkward spot between your broccoli and your peppers that you never quite know what to do with, then the Thumbelina zinnia is your answer. It only reaches 10 to 16 inches. It attracts butterflies and beneficial insects just as well as the bigger varieties, and it fits into spaces that nothing else can really use. Planting either one is about as easy as gardening gets. Clear a bit of surface mulch, drop 2 or 3 seeds, cover them lightly, water them in and walk away. They handle themselves from there without much fuss at all. Find any underused corner or gap in your garden this week, scatter some seeds in there and let them quietly go to work for everything growing around them. The next one is maybe the most classic summer crop there is, home, and the planting method is a little bit different from what most people expect. But once you see it, it just completely clicks. Watermelon in June, I mean, come on. Does it get more summer than this? And there are some genuinely great varieties to know about, depending on where you are and what your season looks like. Sugar Baby is a quick producer at 80 days to maturity. Great call if your season is shorter and you need something that will finish up before the weather turns on you. Mountain Sweet Yellow is a bit of a different look if you want to try something outside the classic red flesh. Crimson Sweet is your standard, totally dependable watermelon. Consistent, reliable, not going to let you down. And then there is Charleston Gray, which is honestly kind of a beast. We are talking 30 to 40 pounds here, sometimes more than that, and the flavour matches the size. It is really exceptional. That is one of the most rewarding things you can pull out of a summer garden, you know. Now, whatever variety you pick, the key thing to understand is that watermelon is planted using the Mound method. And this is where it gets a little different from just pushing seeds into a flat row. You build up a small mound of soil, a little hill basically. Press 2 or 3 seeds into the top at planting depth and cover them over. Once those seeds germinate and the seedlings come up, you thin down to the single strongest looking plant per mound and let that one run. You space those mounds every 4 to 6 feet apart in a diamond pattern, kind of like the dots on a playing die, that offset arrangement. So every plant has room to spread, and the whole grouping helps with pollination and fruit set at the same time. Watermelon is a thirsty crop and a hungry one, honestly. It needs consistent, generous water and solid nitrogen to develop properly, especially once those fruits start sizing up. Skimp on either of those and you will end up with small, disappointing melons that do not reflect the effort you put in. Pick your variety based on how much season you have left. Get those mounds built today. And a June planting in most climates is going to deliver genuinely impressive watermelons before summer starts winding down. And the last crop on this list is one that most gardeners in temperate climates have honestly never even heard of. But if you are growing in real summer heat, this thing is kind of a revelation for leafy greens. So if you are gardening in a hot, humid climate, Florida, the Gulf Coast, anywhere that genuinely feels tropical in summer, then Sissoo really needs to be on your radar. And here is the problem a lot of people hit in those climates. You want leafy greens in summer, but basically everything collapses under serious heat. Lettuce bolts within days. Spinach turns bitter and gives up. Arugula just kind of disappears. Most of the standard leafy greens that work great in spring are completely done by the time real summer kicks in. Sissoo does the opposite, and that is honestly the whole point. It is a low-growing plant, it spreads as a ground cover, and it actually prefers the heat and humidity that destroys everything else around it. You know how most plants look stressed and sad in a Florida July? Sissoo looks its best. It does well in part shade to full shade, which makes it perfect for tucking in at the base of taller plants. Under a banana tree, beneath a mulberry, anywhere that gets filtered, dappled light throughout the day. Those spots in a garden that you never quite know what to do with, the shady corners where nothing else really wants to grow. That is exactly where Sissoo goes and genuinely thrives. Growing it is almost laughably easy. And the best part is that you almost never start it from seed. It is one of those plants that propagates from cuttings so effortlessly, you kind of wonder why anyone would bother with seeds, even if they were easy to find. Take a cutting from an existing plant, drop it into a glass of water on a sunny windowsill, and roots will appear within just a few days, not weeks, days. Once those roots are there, plant it out into the soil in your shadiest spot, and it establishes itself quickly and without complaint. The leaves are genuinely tender and mild, especially when the plant gets some shade protection, and it produces continuously. There is really never a long gap between harvests. You just keep picking, and it keeps pushing out new growth. If you are in a hot climate and summer has always felt like a dead zone for fresh leafy greens, this is the plant that changes that for you. Take a few cuttings this week, root them in water on your windowsill, and tuck them into the shadiest corner of your garden as soon as those roots show up. If any of these 7 crops are already going in your garden right now, drop a comment below and let me know which one. Honestly, I read every single one. And if you are not subscribed yet, hit that button so you do not miss what is coming next. I will see you there.